Cate Montana is a woman after my own heart. Why? Because she believes in the goodness of the human soul, as do I. But there have been ancient forces that have tried to separate us from our own essential love and essential goodness. And we're going to talk about not only that today, but the way we can find our way back, the way we can turn our back on these forces once and for all, so they're no longer reaching in and making us feel shameful, insecure, and separated from one another. So, Cate, welcome back. I haven't seen you in a while. Last time I think was in Boulder in the Gaia Studios. A lot has gone down since then.
A lot has gone down. I can't believe it's the end of 2023 already. Holy moly.
Oh my God. And I mean, the world has been through a great deal over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And I think if you're, understatement. And you write about this in your book, and your book is called Cracking the Matrix. And you decided you were going to go for it, no holds barred about what's going on, the forces working against humanity. And I have to say that all of the different people I've interviewed, all of the different channels that I interview on a regular basis, all say, yes, there is a force working against humanity. And it's almost like this great cosmic drama playing out where other species and other places are actually watching us and how we can break free, how we're going to break free, how we're destined to break free of this. We're a great curiosity throughout the cosmos, from what I understand.
That's one way of looking at it. That's one story. Yeah. I mean, there's so many stories, and I have adopted so many stories and wholeheartedly believed so many stories over the last 45 years of spiritual inquiry. And now it's kind of like, gee, Regina, I've never known more, and at the same time known absolutely nothing.
Nothing. I hear you on that. That is the test of gathering knowledge, is knowing how stupid you are. So I'm guilty of that too. So what I'd like to start with in this conversation is when you were a little girl, because you came into the world pretty aware, pretty open, sentient, and you were able to see things into other dimensions. You also were deeply connected to nature.
Yeah.
All animals, the farm, horses, everything around you. That really was your truth. So let's go back to a day with your grandmother in which you were very little and you saw things that ideally no child or no person should ever have to see.
I didn't remember until the last couple of years what I saw as a young person, because by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I'd shut down that psychic vision. But my grandmother was a very self-centered, apparently very materialistic, greedy woman. And I didn't ever know her, but because by the time I became verbal and conscious, she was pretty much nonverbal and shut down with Parkinson's disease. But I remembered in the last couple of years when I started investigating interdimensional forces and, I'll use the word demonic forces because that's so popularized. But and I started remembering and recovering early childhood memories, and I remember watching what looked like black snakes behind her eyes. I remember seeing her eyes and something move behind her eyes, and it wasn't her. And I also remember the impression of black snakes over her body, fundamentally sucking her energy, her life force, her mental and emotional energies. And I realized in retrospect, it was one of the reasons I spent so much time outdoors, trying to get away from the house, because none of my parents, my grandfather wasn't aware of this phenomenon, but I sure was. And there was no validation, and I was just freaked out. And so it's just been astonishing, Regina, having a new worldview that is actually a very old, ancient worldview, and coming into the realization that there are inimical forces on this planet working against us. And then coming to that perspective, waking up and going, aha, and then so much clicks from the past.
Yes.
Makes sense where it didn't make sense before, and there was not a pattern or an explanation that was logical to explain it. So
yeah, and like a lot of people, you had to go through your own kind of dark journey. There was you were successful, you were in network television back when, and had many successful aspects to your career, your mind, and all of that, but your own kind of ancestral kind of dysfunction
Of course.
playing itself out through you, like almost everybody. This is just
Pretty
part of it.
much.
And these forces have also been with us throughout many, 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 many generations of ancestors. So whether we're imprinted on our DNA or imprinted by other beings, it's happening.
Yeah.
And everyone knows when they're a kid what's right and wrong. I mean, the problem is that we started hoodwinking ourselves as to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I would like you to just talk. You call this an anti-life force, which I think is a very appropriate thing to say. We don't have to name any groups of beings. We don't have to name anything. It's an anti-life form. I couldn't agree with you more. It is truly anti-life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk about your perception of what this is. We'll get into a few examples and then get into the breaking free part of it.
One of the things when I first started the research, because what kicked all of this off was the COVID years when the world went insane. And at that point, I moved out of what I can only call my spirituality bubble, where I'm always positive and everything is focused on the light and a lot of, getting out there to God and spirits above me and all that. And all of a sudden, it was like I just slammed to earth and went, what the heck is going on? What is really going on here? Holy Moses, this is gnarly. And so I did the research, and of course I was shocked. I ran away from the whole idea of the devil because the church made it sound so ludicrous. It's like I wasn't going to believe in something with, red skin and forked tail and horns. And I mean, good heavens. But how shocking it was to realize that for thousands of years, every culture, every civilization on every continent on this planet has a name and a description of these beings. The Native Americans called it Wetiko or Wendigo. The Native Hawaiian kahunas call it the Eepa. Carl Jung called it Entomimos, the Antichrist force on this planet. Of course, the Greeks, the ancient Greeks called them the archons, the evil whispering ones. And so that was a big shock to realize, oh my heavens, this presence has not only been here for thousands of years, but we've all known about it for thousands of years. Which immediately, raised all the question marks in my mind. Is like, well, heck, if this has been around for uncounted thousands of years, it is inimical and dragging us down. Why don't we, and we know about it, why don't we know about it?
Right. And then we could do something about it. If we know about it, we can do something about it.
Exactly.
Sadly, we have been conditioned for so long. It's like the boiling frog syndrome. Things get a little bit ugly, a little bit uglier, a little bit uglier. Pretty soon we're not seeing ugly when it's sitting right in front of us. We're not seeing something that's wrong when it's sitting right in front of us. We don't do anything when we can to rectify these things when it's sitting right in front of us, and for a lot of reasons.
Absolutely. And that was the next chapter, of my research was, well, okay, if it's been here and we've known about it, why, what's going on that's keeping it from doing something about it? And, the first stop was religion and realizing that my impressions as a little girl about how ludicrous the teachings in Christianity are about the devil. The devil made me do it. And I was like, well, that doesn't wash. So the very context of silly stories like, one man and one woman populated the earth without committing incest. And
I had a problem with that when I was 5.
and snakes in the garden with apples and all of that stuff.
And so, Eve was the bad one.
and so I could just,
ludicrous.
I could brush it all aside because it was silly stuff. And so making something ridiculous is one way to do it. But then, of course, it's made to look so scary that even if it wasn't ridiculous, you really don't want to go there because it really is scary if I went there. And then, of course, I got into the whole New Age spirituality movement in the 80s. And the whole focus was on getting out of my body and up and out to the light of God or my higher self or the Christ self or that. And don't look at the dark. Think positively. What was the name of that book? You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought. I think that came out like in 1988 or something like that. And I remember looking at the book in the bookstores going, well, I'm sunk.
Oh, I'm a sinner.
which was a negative thought right there that I caught in the store. And I was like, you see, I can't. So between making this presence silly, ludicrous, and bizarre, or frightening, or just don't look at it because the antidote is just to be positive and wrap yourself in white light, then we never deal with this. It never becomes real. We never really truly understand what it is. So therefore, lurking in the shadows, it remains obscure, but it also keeps its frightening tone. Because if I have to be so positive and wrap myself in white light all the time, well, then obviously I'm afraid of that. And I'm only afraid because I haven't investigated and really discovered what I'm dealing with. And when I turned around, Regina, and looked at this and understood what I'm dealing with, what we're all dealing with, oh my God, the power came back. The gloves were off, and I was like, oh my God, this presence doesn't have enough power to pick up a piece of paper. It's a non-physical.
That's the thing. It has to live through us. It's interdimensional.
Yep.
And it has to live through our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts in our bodies. So it has to be able to have access to us and co-opt us. Yep. And usually we give it that access willingly because we've been taught we're less than, we're sinners, we're evil at heart, but we're trying to find our way back to the light. None of that have I ever believed. I don't believe it. I've never believed it. Not since I was a little kid in Sunday school. So that's baloney. We're lucky that we don't believe that. But many people do believe there's something superior to them that they have to answer to. And that ultimately when they die, they're going to have to answer to that and even worse. So let's talk about that thing that conditioned us, and the ways it conditioned us that we have to feel that we have to bow before.
Oh, wow. Well, that's the whole religious teaching that there's some greater authority than what we are. We say we're children of God, which means we're the same as the parent, except we're not the parent. We're just the next generation. Well, here's where the whole insidious methodology of how the archons, that's pretty much, or the anti-life force works, is insinuation. It is interpenetration into wherever there's a crack, wherever we're wounded, wherever there's trauma, mental trauma, emotional trauma, physical trauma, spiritual trauma, all the above trauma. And so it is an influencer, highly intelligent, but very binary and very black and white. And the reason I called it anti-life was the more I read about these intelligences, is the less easy it was to pinpoint exactly what they are. What's the word? Chimerical? They're the shapeshifters. It's almost like whatever you're most frightened of, that's how they show up. Which is interesting when we take a look, of course, at media and all of the visual programming of, alien this and psychotic, shower scenes and demons and, the images that have been implanted in our brains. So we just don't go there. But the agenda is to instill fear, so that, and the deeper agenda is, as I said, they're non-physical, they have no power, have to work through us. So therefore I realized the gig is to convince us that we're what it is, that we are aggressive, violent, insatiable, warlike, greedy, warlike, callous, indifferent to pain and suffering. Because these beings, cynical. These beings, they can't express or vibrate to higher elevated emotions like love, awe, wonder, the joy. They can feed off of those emotions, but they don't understand those emotions.
The only access point is that lower frequency range of fear or greed, or whatever that baser emotion of humanity, those baser emotions that we possess are. That seems to be the vibrational access point. Because we've heard from many people that these beings from other places come and they feed on fear.
Yeah.
But I see it a little differently. The access point is fear, so they can feed on everything else within our personal buffet. All of the denser stuff.
Lower emotions, because they're
Lower
operating. I mean, if
emotions.
we're going to do higher and lower here, from a frequency perspective, they're operating down here in the subpar basement
Right.
range. So the trick is to lower our light. How can I convince you to not be a being of pure love? How
Right.
can I warp your mind and twist things so that you forget that you're a spirit? So, how can I convince you that you're guilty, filled with shame, that the very fact that you've been brought into a body is a corrupt thing, that you're a piece of poo and you're never gonna amount to anything? And what was I taught in the church was that I'm not worthy enough to gather up the crumbs from underneath thy table, Lord.
Which church did you go to?
I was in the Episcopal Church. So, and then I went to Catholic convent school through high school. So I got my fair share. And so I was shocked, actually, coming out the other side of this in the last couple of years, Regina, how deeply subconsciously I'd bought into the original sin theme. I was shocked at the level, because only when I took the blinders off and turned around and looked at this influence that was trying to convince me that I am a low frequency, devilish, demonic, horrible being, only when I saw that, oh my God, that's what it is. Oh my God, that's not what I am. I am a
Right.
being of pure love. It was like 40 years of New Age teachings about being a spirit being of love. Finally, I didn't have to convince myself. I knew it. I knew it because I took the shadow out of myself and stopped believing it, that I was the shameful one. And that has been the most empowering. That's why I wrote the book. It was like, oh my God, I have been so liberated from fear and from programming and all of that when I finally saw not only was I being manipulated, but how I was being manipulated. Well, and then of course there's the why we're being manipulated, which is ultimately to be able to take over physical embodiment and possess what we've got. But it's got to drag us down to its level to do it.
I hope you're enjoying this video, because if you are, there are dozens more like it on my site, all supported by people like you. So if you'd like to keep this work rolling in and join our community, just click on the Patreon button at reginameredith.com. That also gives you access to insider commentary, my live book club, and other live events with special guests. So join in. Thanks. So the ultimate fear, the ultimate one that they can hammer away on, is death. So everything about the extension of life, no matter how corrupt it starts looking in terms of technology and such, is what's going to be foisted on us now because of the innate fear of no longer existing, which is not possible. I remember when my father died recently, I sat with it. It was a wild day. My little doggie started going into seizures, and they both died the same day.
Oh,
And I was just the same day, and I was running back and forth. I wanted to see her before she died. My friends had to take her in, and I passed them on the freeway. And then when I returned, I had to leave my father's side. It was so late. I was so exhausted, and I knew I'd never see him again. I'd never see him smile again. And so there you go. We've all been through it. But it was so amazing. As soon as Dad was out of his body, a day or so later, when I could just kind of get my energy back and focus, I said, Dad, because I told him, you come find me. When you're on the other side, you come find me. And he did. And we weren't expecting him to die. It happened very suddenly, even though he was elderly. He came and found me, and he was there in a split second, and he was just effusive and talking about how simple it was to just phase from one state to the other.
Yeah.
He was saying, it's just like walking through that door over there. There's nothing to it, dearie. And so we cannot die. I still talk to him all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have to get rid of this notion of death, that we no longer exist, because people in other cultures, the shamans that you've worked with, and I want you to talk about those shamans versus New Age shamans. I think it's important. They are able to connect with the people on the other side. These cultures have always known our ancestors are right here with us. My dad's probably listening right now. He's probably right here. They're with us all the time. So let's talk about the fact we never cease to exist. And let's talk about real shaman versus lightweight shamans.
Well, I have to tell a really quick side story. I was in Santa Fe a couple of months ago in August, and was my birthday, and I was throwing a surprise party, which was a surprise, and it was so much fun. So I was in the middle of this circle of people who, bless their hearts, were standing, holding hands, looking at me, and telling me, what they loved about me, whatever. And I had my back to the front door, and I heard the screen door slam. And then a woman in the group, who's exceedingly psychic, went, "Oh my God, your mother's here." And she wanted to say how she appreciated this and how she was so happy and proud of you. And then her final comment was, "Oh, and she says she's really glad that you didn't turn out to be an alcoholic like her."
See, you're still getting some praise from the other side, finally, from Mom.
Really?
I love it.
40 years later, but okay.
40 years later. But the point is, Mom's still there. We're all still here.
Yeah.
We are pure light. We are that pure frequency called love, which isn't sentimental.
Yes,
It's
no.
a beautiful creative force.
Yeah.
We are all purely that has this little suit on for a little while. And the anti-life forces keep trying to convince us that once you're out of your suit, you don't exist. And people are so afraid of not existing any longer.
Yeah.
So what do the shamans, how do the real shamans approach this?
As you know, I've spent a lot of time working with several shamans down in the Amazon, in Peru, and in Ecuador. And, talking about these entities is like, they're like, "Oh God, what took you so long to talk about it?" It's like nothing new, and that's one of the things that a couple of the people I worked with down there were deeply concerned about, the whole New Age shamanism. Oh, everybody's going to do ayahuasca, and I took a weekend course, and now I'm a shaman, and I'm going to cut the ayahuasca with mushrooms or with LSD to make sure you have an experience, and they. Oh, shoot. And I know that the shamans that I work, my God, Rosa was trained. She started working with ayahuasca when she was 12. And, they're trained to be able to deal with these energies because, and I remember she told me, she said, "I know when somebody walks in the camp, whether they're hooked on alcohol or marijuana or on cocaine or heroin," she says, "because I see the demon, I see the entity with them. And those particular ones that feed on that frequency show up, and they look like, whatever they look like." So it was a no-brainer to all of those people. And I know that the concern expressed was that so many people with great heart and loving intention, good intention.
Most of the people in our New Age community.
Totally. Most absolutely. But they don't know what they're dealing with. They really don't. And especially because we've been inculcated into the process of only look at the light, don't deal with the dark. And as a result, nobody knows what's going on, really. Even some of discernment, if there's anything that's so key, it's discernment. Because, I channel blah, blah, blah. So it's like, okay. So the discernment of just because something is disembodied or in a spirit body doesn't mean that it's healthy for you or got your best interests at heart.
Absolutely.
One of the things that when I was doing this research is that I was like, well, where does this horrible teaching of original sin come from? And it came from St. Augustine back in 300 AD, and he delivered it at the Synod of, I can't remember what, in 365 AD, and it was brought into the theology of the Catholic Church, and now 1700 years later, and all these hundreds of generations of epigenetic guilt and shame and horror about the body and being a wretched human being, we wonder why our modern generation has low self-esteem. Well, anyway. So Augustine, growing up, turned out he was a sex fiend and a drunk. And his father was pagan, his mom was Christian. She despaired that he was going to go to hell. But what turned Augustine around in his 20s was he ran across the teaching of Mani, of the prophet of Babylon, who brought the teaching of Manichaeism, the religion of Manichaeism, into the world back in 200 AD, 230 AD, something like that. Mani had the teaching of original sin, that the body is corrupt. You're born into the body. You're innately corrupt and evil and greedy and subject to the demons and the devil. And therefore we have to get out of the body and be pure and etc. So, okay. The question came though, well, okay, where the heck did Mani get the teaching of original sin? Well, he called it his other self, but he had a spirit talk to him. And he just had this disembodied voice that coached him and talked to him about the evility of humanity and how dirty and wretched and corrupt and lowlife we were. And he, because it was a disembodied being, it was, obviously wiser than somebody in a physical body. Mani of the prophet of Babylon ran with it. St. Augustine came along and looked at the teaching and went, oh my God, it was my body. That made me such a bad boy growing up. Oh, my mommy is going to be so happy to know that it wasn't really me. It was my body that corrupted me. And now I'm going to be a good boy and I'm going to teach about this. And then he became Christian. And then, 1700 years later, here we are.
Hey, hallelujah, pass the plate.
Hey, hallelujah, pass the plate. But that's just a perfect example of, and Augustine, he said that Mani was listening to an angel, obviously. I don't think that the most insidious, corrupting, divisive, corrosive teaching, I think, quite frankly, that has ever been perpetrated on humanity, I don't think that came from an angel.
No, I totally agree with you. And all of the Abrahamic religions are steeped in it. I was raised the same way.
Yep.
I was raised the same way. The only thing is, for some reason, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe too much of what they were telling me at all. I questioned it and got really bad answers. So I just thought, I've said this before, when I went to church, I was forced to till I was 17. Yeah. I was in it for the Kool-Aid and cookies at the end of the service. It's like, that's cool. I fell asleep during the sermon and I was first in line for the cookies and the red Kool-Aid.
The red Kool-Aid.
I tried to make the best out of it. Real Kool-Aid.
Really?
I drank the real Kool-Aid at church.
You made chicken salad out of the event.
Yeah. So, I mean, if there was something, like you said, when we're young, we know what's right. We know what's wrong.
Yeah.
And we can feel it. We know if we've been mean to someone or if someone's been mean to us. We know when someone has lied to us or stolen from us or if we've done the same to them. And we speak up. We know these things. But subtly, that's corroded. And of course, we're talking about the educational system, which creates basically such a limited linear mind at this point. I mean, that's going to change. I have great faith the systems are going to change. But right now, that's what it's doing. So anything you want to say on education, because we're not even going to go into the pharmaceutical industry. Mm-hmm. All we have to do is point to one set of stats during the recent virus that swept around the world, in that even the people who were producing the drugs knew we had a very, very low mortality rate from this. And they even knew the drugs were not going to stop us from getting it. All this was well known. It's all come out now. We don't have to talk about it anymore.
Nope.
But what an agenda to frighten people, ruin economies, separate us from each other, and create enemies within families. Mm-hmm. There couldn't be a more anti-life event than what happened there. And there will be more to come. According to the Z's, they're going to roll out a couple more. So we need to know this time and be a lot smarter about it. Now we know. We've been through round one. We've more or less survived it. So let's go ahead and talk about that in education just a little bit, because everyone knows what we're talking about.
This influence is an influence. And so just as Christianity, all the Abrahamic religions were influenced by a twisted teaching like original sin, which is devastated, I don't know, billions of people over the last 1700 years, just completely corroded our psyche. The same kind of influencing is in politics, is in education. The root word of education is educare, which is Latin for to lead out from. So the whole point
Yes.
of education originally was to lead out from the student their essence, their vibrant interests, their joy, to electrify, get their minds going on where am I at? What am I drawn to? What jazzes me to? Let me impress upon you what the truth is. The
Yes.
world is
Yes.
round, and the pharmaceutical industry is good for you, and whatever you want, whatever you want to
Yeah,
say.
I wasn't a very good student in school either. I lived for the, playing Jackson tetherball and racing people on foot during recesses. That was kind of it for me because most of it seemed pretty superfluous.
Well, here's an interesting story. Back to my grandmother, who was obviously taken over and literally possessed by these entities. So she was in my life until I was 13, and I was in a boarding school. And my freshman year, I was a horrible student too, Regina. All I wanted to be was to be outside with my ponies and under a
Yep.
tree somewhere or wading in a creek. None of what I was being taught made any sense until I was 13. And my grandmother had just passed. And I remember I was so tired of being the class dunce. I was heading into my final exams right before, when Grandma died, then I went into my final exams. And I remember stopping in the parking lot outside between the dorm and the classrooms and made a decision. I'm going to study. I'm tired of being looked down upon. I'm tired of being considered stupid. I am going to just do the material route like I've been taught. It was a very conscious choice. I know at that moment that entities that had penetrated my grandmother switched over and started feeding on me.
Oh my
And
God. So you became a good girl.
I
You
became a
looked
good
for
girl.
approval. You became a good student, I take it, because you're super smart.
Yep. And so I swallowed the Kool-Aid at that point because then I was anti-life myself. I was anti-Cate. I was anti where my heart truly lay, where my essence, where my spirit essence how it wanted to express. I slammed the door on it. I slammed the door on my heart.
On your heart. And you didn't really recover.
No. Regina, this is all unearthed in the last couple of years. I mean, it's
Right.
not that my heart has been completely shut down, but
Yeah.
now looking back from this perspective, and then seeing the penetration, seeing the insidious, invisible influence that has ridden me like a jockey on a horse. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I mean, I finished this book. I finished Cracking the Matrix, writing about this force, thinking that, well, I've got a handle on it. I wrote a book about it. And this beautiful being that I do a lot of work with, Robin Duda in Santa Fe, she's the psychic gal who saw my mother walk in the door. She was like, yes, well, you do have some of these entities in you and working you hard, with programs like driving me about success and always feeling like a failure if you haven't sold 18 million copies of whatever. And I was like, I was so horrified, Regina, to realize that, but then grateful. And so that was the doorway that I started walking through, doing my own inner work, getting deprogrammed from a lot of crap that I didn't know I'd taken on and adopted over the years.
Yeah, you're disarmingly honest in the book. You talk about your experience. You also do a lot of research in the book.
Yeah.
You bring up a lot of what you do is it's kind of a compendium, a quick compendium of the things that have been foisted upon humanity. So for someone that isn't fully aware of the insidious ways in which these other forces have worked their way into our lives and our minds, our feelings, and so forth, the book is just kind of wallops you right here with all of it in a few couple dense chapters, and then you start going into more the nature of us. I'm just going to bring a couple examples out of the book, okay?
Sure.
These are random, so I hope you don't mind these. So one of them, to show the way in which we become inured to ugliness, the way we become inured to the presence of something that if you were little, we'd say that's icky and doesn't feel right. Okay, we'll cut to Super Bowl 2021, Canadian singer known as The Weeknd, portraying Satan's fall, replete with these players on stage with her. that were fallen angels with frightening red eyes, like that horrid horse coming into the Denver airport with those gleaming red eyes. What the heck's up with that one, right?
Really?
And zombie men wearing red with jock straps over their faces. And people, who allowed that to happen? How is that celebratory in any way? It's purely denigrating to the human spirit on every level. And yet at the very highest levels, this decision was made that this show was going to be shown to, I don't know how many people watched the Super Bowl around the world. Millions, tens and tens of millions of people around the world, maybe more. So that's one example.
Yeah.
And then there's another little cartoon you talked about in the book. I'm just reading the fun stuff instead of getting into all the kind of horrific stats on certain things that most of us have heard of but may not be fully aware of. This one is a New Yorker strip cartoon, a single frame cartoon of a CEO addressing shareholders meeting. And the CEO is saying, and so, while the end of the world scenario may be rife with unimaginable horrors, we believe the pre-end period to be filled with unprecedented opportunities for profit. And I thought, isn't that where we are right now?
Isn't that where we are right now?
The ways in which we're being profited off of.
Yeah.
So if and when another one of these virus scenarios is rolled out, anyone who was unsettled and just confused and lost in the fog of it all last time, I just want to say, stop, be still, look this square in the eyes, think about what happened last time, think about what was projected onto us and what we were asked to do. And this time we can handle it quite differently. We're getting much more savvy now.
Yeah.
They've shown their faces enough that we don't have to go along with these programs anymore. Yeah. So let's go now to what the adepts of the world have always seen in humanity. We talked about what the shamans have seen. And they're equipped to deal with these forces of all levels.
Very much
and
so.
to help us get them out of our field and so forth. But those aren't New Age shamans. Those are down and dirty, worked hard for a lifetime to understand and also ultimately wrangle with these beings on our behalf, these entities, these energies on our behalf.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about what the adepts have talked about forever and what they've been connected with and what they have seen in terms of the nature of who and what we truly are.
Well, it's so funny because when we talk about those spiritual adepts, they're so out of the whole matrix.
They are.
They don't even address the matrix. So, and what I'm beginning to realize, Regina, is that any teaching, anytime anybody says, well, do it this way, and here's the plan, I go, oh, okay.
Yeah, me too.
No, time out.
Not down with it.
It's time for us to move into our own authority. There is no authority higher than me as my beautiful being of pure love spirit that I am. Now, I may be a jerk as a human being and pretty twisted up. That's not what I'm talking. That's not what I'm talking about. So, it's becoming more and more apparent to me that it's about frequency. It's about what frequency do I emanate? Where am I at on the electromagnetic spectrum? Am I down here with the interdimensional snakes, or am
because of the feelings? You're competitive.
Of the feelings.
You feel guilty. Oof.
Here is oh God. One of the things that shocked me was I realized writing this book that the spiritual agenda, the religious agenda, and the social agenda were all the same agenda. You're not enough. You're bad and wrong.
Simple.
So it was the same agenda, and I was like, "Oh,
subscribe to us, buy our stuff." Yeah,
really. You're not thin enough. You're not rich enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not successful enough. You're not holy enough. You're not righteous enough. You're not pure enough. You're not a virgin. You're not Christed enough. And I was like, "Oh my God, it's the whole same program. I'm not enough." Well, that leaves me with who I really am, and it's like, and I went, oh, the whole idea of self-improvement is yet another manipulation. How can I become what I already am?
It's true. But you
You
can
know,
drop the stuff that's standing between you and you.
yeah, yeah. And so that's the teachings. Well, you got to do it this way, and you got to meditate in this position, and you got to say
Yeah.
this mantra, and yada, yada, yada. And it's just like, no, no, I just need to stop and get in tune with my body. And my body doesn't lie. My body isn't even really physical, it's spirit too. It's the
Right.
same
And that's the
substance.
key.
That's the key.
Yes,
And so
it is.
so much of that, again, back to the twisted light, is just like religion was twisted with teachings like original sin. The whole New Age, bless our hearts, very sincere, passionate people in the New Age
Oh,
movement,
yeah.
myself included,
Me too.
became deluded into thinking that I had to improve and get out there, leave your body and get out there someplace and listen to some disembodied whatever. And I'm like, oh, finally,
Yeah.
after all these years, Regina, I'm finally in my body. All these years thinking it was up and out, when it was down and in,
Right.
down and in.
Right. And just to clarify, when I was speaking about adepts, it was more the ones who we know of who were able to look into the human condition and see the truth and beauty of what we really are and reflect that back to us, not the ones
Absolutely.
with dictates and programs and protocols. No,
Yeah.
that's not what I'm talking about at
Yeah.
all. The ones who could reflect back to us the beauty of what we truly are. And many of us have had experiences, whether it's happened spontaneously, dream time, on ayahuasca. We've been able to see into that field of just incredible energetic beauty and connectedness. There is no you can't separate us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that individuated part that is here to love and play and experiment and grow and connect with each other, according to Christopher Bache, who I interviewed recently, who did LSD in the Mind of the Universe, toward the very, very end of it, he said the Holy Grail was to actually feel all of this light, all of this beauty in our body. Well, we're in our bodies, not when we're out of them. We're going to feel that fine enough when we're out.
Yeah.
But while we're in them, to feel all of that, that's the key. To feel, for no reason, love when you're in a supermarket line. Just look around and you just kind of smile at everyone, feel connected, your heart starts warming up, just to live from that place.
That's it. It really is so simple, and simple has been made to be simple-minded and not really credible. But it is so simple. And when I started writing the book, I do a key at the end of it, because it's very heavy. I mean, it could be considered as very heavy, dark material. And I didn't
Some of
want
the
it to be.
chapters are just telling it head up, straight up. Yep.
Yeah, and so at the end of every chapter, however, there is a key to lighten it up. It's like, well, what can I do about this? It's just, don't
Right.
just smack me around with this stuff. What do I
Right.
do?
Right.
And so the first key was, I was sitting there racking my brains trying to figure out the first key, and I just stopped and I went and just tuned into my body, and I went, oh, that's the first key. Stop. Tune into your body and just feel what you feel. If you're
Your body
frightened, or if
knows.
you're concerned, or if you're this or you're that, your body is registering whatever the atmospheric energetic soup it's in, that you're being bombarded with. And your body knows. There's no separation between spirit and body. It's all one gig.
Yeah, and your mind is usually the part that's getting in the way, that's making the inaccurate types of decisions and assumptions, when your gut and your heart are receiving the same information and responding even faster than the brain. We just override it. We've been taught to override it with logic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, but I read that book that said, if I feel this way, I shouldn't feel this way, and this is what I should do about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the very first thing is just start to feel, just start to tune in. And that's, again, go back to education. We have had everything leveled at us to teach us to just look to an external authority for information, whether it's Google, or whether it's the teacher, or whether it's President Biden, or whoever, or never mind, or Bill Gates. The truth and the answers are always outside. No, the truth and the answers are always inside. They're never outside. They're always inside. For us, for you, for me. And that's the last thing we're taught or trained to trust, is ourselves. We have been, the matrix is the thought matrix. There, people have asked me, well, what about the matrix? There are so many matrices. There's the matrices of sexual identity. There's the matrix of education and economics and politics. I mean, there's wheels within wheels. But essentially, it is a matter of simply just finally just letting it drop. Whether you can do it for 2 seconds, great.
Even for 2 seconds, you can access how you feel.
You can access how you feel. And that's Ariadne's thread out of the labyrinth. It really is. To trust the body, trust your feelings, your gut, your intuition. You can feel what's right. Kids, you said earlier, kids know what's right. We know what's right. We know in our heart or our gut.
And we do. And it's interesting because a little while ago we were talking about judgment and such, how you're bad if you judge. And I remember my guide saying at one time, many years ago, they said, humanity would be so much further ahead if you just stop judging one another. Okay, that is true enough. Mm-hmm. We don't need to be sitting in judgment of one another. However, when there's something going on that I don't feel is right, I'm very judgmental. And I do get very angry. I do not like to see harm. I don't like to see humiliation. I don't like to see these things foisted from one person or one whatever to another. And I become very judgmental and very angry, and I fight against it. And, I don't know that that's wrong. I don't feel fearful. I'm just angry. It's like, don't try doing that. Stop doing that to one another.
This cauterization of being a whole, WHOLE, human being, which means full spectrum, from rage to bliss, from selfishness to altruism. I mean, be able to feel it all and express it all. There's no judgment and not judge the expression. And even if somebody's just an asshole, I can call somebody an asshole if they're being an asshole, and that's not being judgmental. That's just being clear. Now,
I agree with you.
Judge him for being bad and wrong, for being an asshole, well then, okay, I've definitely moved into judgment. So, wow, I have seriously cleared my decks, Regina, of that. That's a program that is guaranteed to keep us cauterized, trapped, constantly self-reflecting. Oh my God, am I saying something wrong here? Am I not being...
And not feeling our truth.
So that we cannot be these beautiful, full, expressive beings that we are. We are beings of pure love. And we're here to express it all. There's nothing that, wow. Whoa.
So it's okay to be angry when you're seeing and experiencing unkindness, unjustness, unfairness. It's okay to be angry about it. I mean, and if we have to stand up for ourselves. There have to be points at which we say, no more, we're done.
No.
Get out of the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Well, I think quite frankly, the 2-letter word no with an exclamation point behind it is one of the most fiercely spiritual things that we can do nowadays. And stand up, not in a self-righteous, aggrandizing, ego-inflated way, but no, this is unacceptable to do this to children. No, this is unacceptable to do this to humanity. No. I mean, do you really, you said something about money a few minutes ago. Did you know, I ran across a statistic that for every child that decides to go with a sexual reassignment surgery and then go down that path, it's a guaranteed $1.4 million into the pharmaceutical company's pockets for every child that makes that choice.
Oh, that's interesting. No, I did not know the pharmaceutical numbers on that one.
Yep.
And that's something else. That's a whole other subject.
That is a whole other subject. And I'm actually writing another book about it.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting because it has a lot to unpack in there. Yeah. I mean, yes, we've been very shoehorned into what sexual identity is supposed to be, and there are souls who want to break out of it. And then there are agendas to use souls to make it make a desire to break out of it from a place that isn't naturally even there with some people. So, yeah, it's a very loaded subject, very delicate, and can create so many challenges for the individuals. But I did not know that the profit margin for it was that high. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
This is just one. And again, I want to say, we really, I mean, this is coming out during the holidays, and I want this to be empowering. I want people to say, when they see the BS and materialism and the running ragged, trying to overgive and everything, just to stop for a minute and say, how do I really feel about this? Do I want to be at this mall on Christmas Eve or Hanukkah? Do I really want to do that?
Yeah.
No, I just want to sit with someone and maybe have a cup of tea or a glass of wine. That's what I'd really like to do.
Yeah.
And the thing is, your group can narrow once you decide to live your truth. Listen to your body. Drop out from the programs. Many people start feeling a bit isolated because you can lose some friends along the way.
In there, got that
We've been
t-shirt in the closet.
Me too.
Yeah.
And so we have to have the courage to say, you know what, it doesn't really matter if anyone likes this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I think is right for me and for whatever I have to give to others.
And this is my gift to the world as much as to myself. As I say, this is the most liberating undoing I have ever experienced, Regina, is finally taking the blinders off and looking square in the face of low-level forces that are intentionally ensnaring and dragging us down. We have been manipulated 6,000 ways from Sunday. It is just increasing. But the good part is there's so much light happening. There are so many people waking up. There is so much, it is time. That this agenda can only go so far until it is an anti-life force. It is a non-sustainable energetic consciousness
that is winding down.
It's why it can't go anywhere but to its own demise, because that's its frequency. It's anti-life. It is not going to grow. It cannot win in the end. And that brings up a whole other subject. When I realized that there was nothing to fight against, that why would I bother fighting against a force, that can't even pick up a piece of notepad paper. Mm-hmm. It's just like the power comes through me adopting my own sense of shame and lessness and lack of power. And when I step into my own power and realize, oh my God, this intelligence, this presence requires us to do its work for it. We are the creators. We are the power. It wants what we've got. It wants bodies. It wants life.
Yeah.
So it's the most actually positive, exciting time.
I agree. That's why I wanted to do this, because I see it as exciting. I see it as a big no.
Yeah.
Oh, up the sign. No. And when we do find ourselves going into anxiety and neuroses and feelings like, oh my God, I'm not accepted, I'm not good enough. Stop. Just stop and know that that's the exact fuel that the very thing stimulating those feelings wants.
Yep.
Just stop and then take a little breath and feel inside yourself. What do you want? What do you really want?
And then
right?
If you're confused, because the head is almost always confused, go to your heart, go to your body, feel what the body feels, feel what the body is telling you, and then follow that. And so I truly think that this is the most exciting and positive step that we could possibly take. Is it gnarly at the very beginning? Sure, because we've been trained for so long to avoid this whole subject. Mm-hmm. And we've been made afraid of it. But that's the twist. There's nothing to be afraid of.
And it has no power.
No, they have no power, and there's nothing to fight against, because if I turn and I go, okay, I'm putting my white hat on and I'm going for the black hats, that is the story of conflict. That is the story of right over wrong. That's the story of power over, of conquering, of making right. No, don't feed it. That just feeds
Disengage. Disengage.
Create something new. I mean, I'm so excited because we are now, once you see what's really going on and you can no longer be manipulated and controlled, it's like, what am I going to create now?
Yeah.
What can we come together and create now?
Yeah. A lot. as things continue changing, because the bummer is that as this force is being all of the sheets are being pulled away so we can see what it is, we can feel what it is and know what it is. We see the agendas. It's just it's so boring now, it's so obvious.
Yes,
But
it is boring. I
at
must
that
admit.
stage, but a lot of people that are still
Yeah.
kind of inculcated into the mainstream stories and news and such are not aware yet. They still have to find out one person at a time.
No.
And so as this occurs, there's going to be a stronger and stronger push with more truly kind of ugly stuff to take one last snatch at humanity. But over the course of the next bit of time, the next few decades, this is going to wind down considerably and we're going to have ourselves back.
I think it's going to happen faster than the next few decades, Regina.
I hope it happens in the next year. I'd love
I think
it.
the zit's going to pop in the next 5 years. Seriously.
Good. Excellent.
Because that's
I
kind
love
of what
hearing
it
that.
is. There's so much light building. There's so much. The earth is behind us. The earth is spirit as well. She's about life and evolution. And so there's so many forces just like, new. Let's do this the way that we're born to do it, that we're equal to. Oh, and there's
Yeah.
so much pressure that it's just like, it is kind of like popping a zit. It's just like bringing all this negativity that's just exploding
to a head.
out of you.
And many people I've interviewed have said they repeatedly go to the year 2027.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Many people, they don't know each other's work. It's very interesting. They keep pointing 2027. That's just a few years away from now,
Indeed.
where there's going to start being a significant change. So I'd love to see the zit pop that year. But if it even starts, I'm happy. Anything is progress at this point. Meanwhile, we can extricate ourselves from this nasty little web that's been spun for us, and we can hold hands with each other and look each other in the eye. Stop being totally dependent on devices. Try to touch one another for one. So any final wrap-up thoughts on some of the just kind of we just said go to the heart. I agree. Go to love. Follow love. And try to do no harm. Don't try to do no harm as best we can to any other soul. So anything else you have to say as an encouragement during the holiday season?
And it's to trust what we know. I mean, when we look at as I say, I have trans friends that, genuinely needed to express to even to their spirit to enter the body, they had to switch gender, start taking testosterone, whatever it was. I have friends like that. I get that that's true.
Their family.
See through the BS. Don't be afraid to call a spade a spade. Don't be afraid to look. Oh my God, did you see the pictures of the recent fountain? It was like, I forget, it was like 500,000 euros. It was built in Vienna, one of the most beautiful cities on the planet. This was the most ghastly, ugly, had all these entities around. Talk about entities. It looked like a 3-year-old on acid created the fountain. It was the epitome of ugly. So when you see the epitome of ugly, whether it's a fountain erected in Vienna that you paid taxpayer dollars for, or whether it's somebody approaching you with something in their hand that they want to put in your body, or an educational program that's coming out, oh my God, don't be afraid to call a spade a spade. It's not right. Say no. And
Say no.
And let your heart flower in the power of that saying no, because that's the love shining forth, coming out your mouth with N-O, no more.
Yes. Couldn't be more on the same page. I was going to talk briefly about this little document I came across many years ago. It was from 1964, January, after Kennedy was shot. The congressional record, and it was a congressional briefing on an agenda, a group of people and an agenda that they were spotting. They went underground and were looking at this agenda that would become manifest. And one of the things it had in it, which was very disturbing to me, was to start putting asymmetrical art in public places so people get used to asymmetry. It was to break down the family and start making certain agendas that at the time we didn't feel comfortable with seem commonplace in society. And they had a lot to do with the financial world, a lot to do with the world. For these people taking over positions of curatorships at museums, coming into the position of editors and critics, art critics, literary critics, and such, to start propelling dark projects forward. And everything I read on that from the congressional record has actually come to pass.
Absolutely.
It was fascinating. So this is an agenda. So walk away. If it's ugly, walk away. We
Yeah.
don't need it.
And once you realize you've been manipulated, and then it's not your fault. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that humanity has not been complicit. We haven't been blind, stupid, greedy, whatever. But we've also
we've
been
been yeah.
incredibly naive. Why? Because we're essentially beautiful beings of love.
Yes.
We can't even fathom how
Yeah.
anything could be twisted the way it's been twisted. That's that's a shining indicator of our beauty, of our beautiful spirits. Still say enough and no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we don't have to buy it. We can just sit and bathe in our own wonderful bodies and feel everything we want to feel. And if something feels off and is stressing us out, dive in a little deeper. How come that's stressing us out? Just look at it a little further. Stillness, nature, like you say, take nature. That's the big one. Nature will never lie to you, ever.
Nope. So get in your body.
There's a lot to do.
Sit under a tree.
Get out, take a little walk in the woods in the snow. Sit under a tree.
Turn off the phone.
Turn off the phone. Don't take it with you as you are. Go for a little swim on the beach. You're in Hawaii, so lucky you. No snow for you this year.
No snow for
Anyway,
me.
Kate, thank you so much, and I really appreciate that you wrote this book. It kind of gets people off their butts. That's what it does. And it reminds us of just how really, truly, essentially wonderful we are.
Yeah.
We are.
We are.
We're just love. We're light. We're just barely, there are very few particles to this being, even. Yeah. We're just space. We're just consciousness.
It's amazing what we are. When we finally see past the programming in the matrix, it's like, oh, there I am. Oh.
There we are. So here we are. So you have a wonderful rest of the holiday season with a Santa in his, I guess, swimming shorts.
Most likely. And a surfboard instead of a sled.
Okay. And so we'll meet again and talk about your next book when it comes out, Kate.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for being brave and being, as I said, incredibly disarmingly honest throughout your book, because many, many people feel these things, but a lot of people who write these books don't really want to reveal themselves to being kind of that pathetic at times. So thank you, my dear. Okay, everybody. So again, the title of Kate's book is Cracking the Matrix. Until next time, thank you for joining us here on reginameredith.com. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you might also want to consider joining Patreon, which allows me to keep all of this content free and available to everyone. And if you're looking for like-minded souls, you might also enjoy my online community called Our Neighborhood. Links to join are in the description.